All right, boys, we are reviewing the machine gun, the Swarm. Now, this is the Adept version that we're going to be reviewing. It is dropping this week from Devil's Lair. It's also dropping alongside Adept mods, including the new Adept mod, Adept Big One Spec. Now, this mod actually increases damage against powerful combatants, bosses, and vehicles. I was really hoping this mod was going to do a little more, but essentially, it gives a 7.8% buff against both bosses as well as majors. Essentially, Adept Big One Spec is just boss spec and major spec merged together into one, which is nice. Okay, I'm not complaining, but I don't know. I just saw Adept Big One Spec and I was thinking, oh boy, what is that? They're gonna be like 13%, 14% gonna be double? No, not the case. Regardless though, the Swarm herself is an amazing machine gun. This weapon deals arc damage. It also falls within that high impact frame archetype. Now I'm gonna speak from the perspective pretty much from PvE today, because inside of PvP, the Swarm is not bad, but it's definitely not my first option amongst machine guns. Like, hands down, the best machine gun in the game inside of PvP is probably Commemoration, which is the raid machine gun, which is present in the adaptive archetype. High impacts for me inside of PvP just don't feel good. They never have, except for back in D1. Y'all remember Yoder's hammer? But back then, high impacts could 3-tap. The Swarm, though, does 48 damage per crit and 34 per body inside of PvP, requiring us to land 4 crits in order to secure the kill on mid-resilience Guardians. Now, if you can make Swarm work inside of PvP, great. But for me, this machine gun is not a PvP weapon. It is more gauged at PvE, which takes us to pretty much all the roles we've gotten. Now, I've gotten some really good roles, and we're going to start off with this one right here. This bad baby comes with extended barrel with that jump up there in recoil direction, almost making it vertical. We're sitting at like 89 recoil direction here. Tactical mag for that increase in magazine. Surplus for that bump there in handling, reload speed, as well as stability alongside Dragonfly. Now, Dragonfly, you know, it creates these elemental explosions on precision kills. It scales based on the damage of your weapon, meaning for an archetype like this, where it's high impact and is doing a lot of damage per bullet, the AoE damage itself scales significantly. Now, the arc explosion, and I am pairing this with the Dragonfly spec mod, was pretty orgasmic. I mean, just watching these arc explosions was giving me Fatebringer vibes, or almost like loaded question vibes. The Swarm with Dragonfly feels really, really good, and I would say for the most part, this is probably the god roll for clearing out ads. But is Surplus the best perk to pair there alongside Dragonfly? You can roll with things like Outlaw, which, considering you are going for crit shots, I would say Outlaw is a really good perk to roll here alongside Dragonfly for that instant reload. I was pairing mine with Actium War Rig though, which does work with machine guns. But inside of PvE, yes, I think Outlaw, Dragonfly would be the combo I would go for. Now, some of our other rolls that we've got today, I did get a Chamber Compensator, a Pendant Mag, Bottomless Grief roll, which, by the way, Bottomless Grief states that while you are the last living member of your fire team, each takedown refills your magazine. Very similar to like Celerity, right? But similar to Celerity, I just don't like this perk because it requires your team to be dead. This one also comes with Vorpal Weapon, which has increased damage against bosses, vehicles, and guardians with their super active. I like Vorpal simply because it is a passive buff. It is only a 15% buff, but it's not bad, especially against champions or other single targets where you don't want to do anything to buff up your weapon. You don't have to go out like Rampage and get a number of kills and then burn all of your shots into that single target. Vorpal just gives you that nice passive buff. And on Swarm here, it's not bad. But I want to take you to the other role that I want you to look out for. The role that we've been grinding for all day today and all day yesterday. And that's actually either a combination of any of these mag perks, whether they're Pendant Mag, Tactical Mag, or even Extended Mag, alongside Surplus, Outlaw, and One for All. Now, One for All, I have now rekindled my love for this trait. We used it last week on Shadow Price. Such a good perk. But just tagging on damage to 3 opponents will now buff the damage here of Swarm by 35%. We're talking weapons of light level. I think what I like so much about it is that it doesn't require you to actually land damage. You just have to shoot targets. Even if you have a target in front of you that's immune, maybe it's a boss in immunity phase, and even shooting that target with that shield around them will still result in One for All being procced. Fellas, I want this roll so bad. So bad! And I can't decide whether or not I want One for All in Surplus or One for All in Outlaw. And it really just comes down to you. Obviously, Surplus is really dependent based on how many of your abilities are fully charged. But the way I'm looking at this is like Actium War Rig with some sort of magazine perk here. Hit a couple targets, boom, I got 35% damage. My weapon's now auto-reloading. And again, you can chain this back to back. Is it better than my Dragonfly roll? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. I think it's still the best damage dealing perk, even compared to Vorpal, despite it requiring requiring you to do some extra work in order to proc it. But those are the perk combinations I would look for here on Swarm, guys. One for all, surplus, outlaw, any of these magazine dealing perks, as well as a dragonfly roll. If you are looking to use this weapon inside of PvP, you're just like, man, I love this machine gun. It's my favorite machine gun in the game. I want to use it inside of PvP, although I do not recommend it. I'm not saying it's terrible. It's just not that good. There are some perk combinations that might make this weapon a tad bit better. Most notably, things like dynamic sway and tap the trigger. That's always been a great combination. You might even want to go surplus and tap the trigger, just to give yourself that increased bump there in stability on the front end without having to require you to actually chew down your magazine in order to actually proc dynamic sway. But tap the trigger really is going to make this weapon much stickier for you, although, like I said a second ago, commemoration is just sticky enough all on its own. To me, it's the best PvP machine gun in the game, which is kind of crazy considering that adapters have a 0.53 second TTK value, whereas high impacts have a 0.5. You would think the one with the better TTK would be the better weapon, but not always, as the feel of the weapon really does make a huge difference on these machine guns. So guys, that is our review there for the Swarm. Play the Nightfall this week. I know a lot more folks are more interested in either the Palindrome or Shadow Price, but I think Swarm is actually a very good machine gun. The Adept version has the ability to slot on a ton of different mods, as well as all the other Adept mods, whether it's like Adept Stability, Adept Range, Adept Reload, Adept Mag, which by the way does throw up our mag size to 69. Pretty nice. But fellas, really, this is a good machine gun. Is it 21% delirium level nasty? Not quite. Until we get Killing Tally back, man, it's hard to even consider any other machine gun on that level. Do I foresee it happening in the future? Yes. I think Killing Tally, as well as all other pinnacle perks, will make a return in some way or another. Will it be present on a future version of the Swarm? Who knows, man? Who knows? Regardless, though, this weapon by itself today feels great. So lock down those rolls, guys. Good luck to you. And again, if you're looking for a PvE guide, down below in the description will be a link to our Devil's Lair Grandmaster guide. So feel free to check that out. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.